Turning now to the economy, inflation is showing absolutely no signs of letting up. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that U.S. inflation hit a 4-decade high in March, rising to 8.5%. And as we all feel the increase of the daily costs of living, women may be feeling the pain the most. According to a new poll conducted by the nonpartisan civic organization All In Together, 58% of women voters said the economy wasn't working well for them personally, compared to 47% of men who said the same thing. Here to discuss, All In Together CEO and co-founder Lauren Leader. So Lauren, lay out for us the reasons. That's always my question. What are the reasons? Why isn't the economy working for women?
Well, it's prices. I mean, the inflation has really hit Americans hard, and it's especially hit women. And why? Because women are also disproportionately in low-wage jobs. And I think part of what we're seeing that makes this such a pernicious and difficult problem is that we do have record low unemployment, right? Employment is available for most Americans, 3.6% unemployment, although it's higher among Black and Latina women. But many of those jobs, even in states that have passed, higher minimum wage, so-called living wage at $15 an hour, $15 an hour is still not enough to keep pace with the prices of basic goods like food and rent and gasoline. Childcare obviously is also on that list, but right now, voters are telling us that it's really just the basic staples, household goods that are just become so expensive, people can't afford to pay for their lives.
Was this problem exacerbated by the pandemic? How much of this predated COVID, and how much of it has been made worse because of the circumstances of the pandemic?
Well, prices have been rising for a long time, and there's been concern for years that wages were not keeping pace with inflation generally, and so that as soon as you see this big spike in inflation, Americans are poorly prepared. I will say that there's some really interesting splits in the data between the education level. Voters who have college degrees are definitely not feeling the pain the way that non-college educated voters are, and by the way, that's then also breaking down across party lines. So what you see is that actually Republicans who do tend to be more working class, both male and female Republicans, are feeling it more acutely. And what they're saying is that this is a voting issue. But the thing that's really interesting, Zerlina, is that Democrats are also, even though Democrats are less likely to say that the price increases are hurting them personally, they are concerned, and they do blame the Democrats. The Democrats are the party in power. I think this is a real wake-up call. If Democrats don't seriously address some of these basic cost of living issues, it's going to be a serious problem in the midterms. Whatever other issues we thought were going to be salient going into the midterm elections, healthcare, et cetera, none of it matters relative to just the basic cost of living. And by the way, you just saw in France exactly what happens when a large swath of voters are concerned about the cost of living. It pushes them away from the incumbent and towards potentially radical right-wing candidates just looking for solutions. And I think we should be concerned about that in the U.S.
It's an important point about the Democratic agenda, and it leads me to a question about Build Back Better, which we know has not become the law. So what policies included in Build Back Better would help fix this?
Well, and I'm not sure that it's the right answer now. I mean, I think that an aggressive focus on, going after any price gouging, also some supports for lower income Americans, folks that are on food stamps, for instance, are on a fixed dollar amount for their groceries. And we're hearing stories of women foregoing meals in order to feed their families, because if you're on SNAP benefits and overnight the cost of milk and eggs triples, you're not getting more SNAP benefits. I think the administration needs to very quickly look at some emergency interventions in terms of increasing food assistance to lower income folks. And I think they have to start aggressively going after the price increases where they are really based on gouging. Some of it is supply chain issues. Some of it is the influx of cash into the system from the last stimulus bill, and some of it is that interest rates have been so low. But fundamentally, we need some emergency intervention for low-income Americans. When we start looking at people trading off, paying for groceries and other basic necessities, it's time for a very serious wake up.
In terms of how quickly that any of those things you just listed off could be put into place, how much of what you've just said can be done by the executive branch, by the Biden administration, and how much of it is left to Congress?
Some of it. And look, I think that there's two pieces here, right? There's the practical and there's the political. You know, practically speaking, obviously it's hard to respond to this stuff, and some of it is not the fault of the administration. On the other hand, it's imperative that this administration demonstrate that they hear people's pain, that they're going to do everything in their power to address it, and that it is a top priority. And the other thing, Israelina, that I think surprised us a little bit is that when we asked voters about their top issues in these polls, Ukraine is at the bottom of the list. It obviously is an enormous crisis in the world, but you know, people are very distracted by these basic day-to-day issues of getting by, and that is the number one thing that concerns them. Beyond not even close are any other issues, including things like prescription drug pricing, which the Democrats are currently very focused on. It matters, but you know, voters are saying nothing trumps this issue of prices and just basic affordability. So I think there's no question to me that Republicans will take advantage of this issue in every way they can. They don't necessarily have better solutions, but they're going to take political advantage of it, and it could spell big trouble in the fall.
Lauren Leader, thank you so much, as always, for being here. Really important conversation. Always great to have you. Please stay safe.